Good evening. This is Councilor Cruz, and welcome to the Ordinance Committee meeting for Tuesday, December 29th, 2020 via Zoom. I just have something to read. This meeting is being held in accordance with the Governor Charlie Baker's signed open meeting law order dated March 12, 2020, which relieves a public body from the requirement of Section 20 of Chapter 30A that it conduct its meetings in a public place that is open and physically accessible to the public, provided that the public body makes provisions to ensure public access to the deliberations of the public body for interested members of the public through adequate alternative means following COVID-19 procedures. Out of respect for public health and in response to the governor's declared state of emergency, this meeting will be closed to the public, and interested parties can instead access the deliberations via a live stream, www.youtube.com/user, TheBrocktonChannels/live. Thank you and welcome to the meeting, everyone. I will read the first and only item on the agenda tonight. An ordinance, number one, ordinance. An ordinance amending Part 2 of the revised ordinances, Chapter 21, taxi cabs, buses, etc., be it ordained by the City Council of the City of Brockton. Section 21-11A shall be amended. Excuse me while I get this on my iPad. Shall be amended by striking the word shall and inserting in its place may, so that the revised ordinance reads, all taxi cabs in the city may displace an identity light on top of the taxi cab. Further, section 21-15 shall be amended by striking the words 1/4 and replacing and inserting in its place 1/8, so that the revised ordinance reads effective on April 1st, 2009, not less than 1/8 of a licensee's vehicles to which a license applies shall be equipped with safety shields. And further, section 21-32, subsection 3B shall be deleted in its entirety, as filed by Councilor Nicastro. The first part of that is to allow taxi cabs to put the identity light on top of the taxi cab if they want to, instead of that they have to. Councilor Nicastro, you're not on the committee, but you file this. Would you like to give us any background you have on this?
Yes. I filed this at the suggestion of my constituent Donald Karp, and he works for Yellow Cab, which is owned by Brian Parker and located on Putnam Street in Ward 4. And I'm fortunate that both Mr. Karp and Mr. Parker are on this call this evening. And so I would like to respectfully ask, even though they're not among the invited persons, you were aware that I was going to bring them, and I'd like to ask that Mr. Karp be allowed to speak now and give you an overview of why they are requesting these ordinance changes.
Councilors, if there's no objection, we'll ask them. And then I do have Lieutenant Perez from the police department, who is responsible for the, in the city, the taxis are actually under the purview of our ordinances, but of course by the chief of police or his designee, which is Lieutenant Perez. So if we will have if Mr. Karp and Mr. Parker want to give us their reasons, what they're looking for, and then we'll have ask Lieutenant Perez for her thoughts on this.
Thank you.
Mr. Karp, did you or Mr. Parker, whoever wanted to go first?
If you want, I'll go first.
If you can state your name and address for the record.
Name is Donald Karp. I reside at 11 Skyview Drive in Brockton. And if you want, I'll stop.
Brian, speak up.
Okay.
Brian, say something.
All right. Dawn, I would like to speak first.
Go ahead.
I would like to give an
Brian
explanation.
wants to go first. Okay.
Mr. Parker, if you can give your name and address for the record.
Yes, it's Brian Parker, 15 Michelson Drive in East Bridgewater, Mass. 02333.
Thank you. And you're the owner of Yellow Cab?
Yes, sir.
All right. And you're the one that asked for these changes to the ordinance. If you wanted to
Correct.
give us a little background.
Yep. Well, basically right now, Uber and Lyft don't have any restrictions. They can do whatever they want, whenever they want, and where they want. And the simple thing is that they can put a car on the road with no restrictions, with just a registration. It's that simple. And we need to be on a even playing field so that we can stay in business, especially during this epidemic. And we also have drivers that refuse to drive a car with a shield. And if they come into work and there's no other car but a shield, they'll go home, which the city of Brockton suffers. We do a lot more than taxi driving. We act as we transport the elderly to doctor's appointments. People call us as an ambulance or a ride to the hospital. We take people to work back and forth. If they're late, they're fired. So on the instances of the shields, it's also the elderly cannot get in and out of them, or if an injured person has a broken leg or something like that, it's very difficult for them to get out. And the roof lights, I appreciate it. It's up to us. The biggest problem is technology, where some of these new lights, if you want to call them, the lighting part itself, it does not compatible with the electricity in the cars, because everything's updated. And that's pretty much all I have to say on the roof lights. And
the shields.
Right.
Okay. Mr. Cap, you have anything you want to add to that?
Yes. First off, I'd like to say that the working with the city and the police department in particular in regulating the taxi cab industry is going very smoothly. So we have no complaints in how things are going. The problems are the taxi cab industry is in survival mode. Right now, Yellow Cab is the last surviving taxi cab in the whole area. Brockton Yellow Cab is the only cab for not only Brockton, but every town that's contiguous to the town. And even as far as Randolph and even all the Bridgewaters. So the Yellow Cab is important to more than just even Brockton. I was thinking it's kind of silly. Here we are talking about signs on top of a cab running around the city, and we're in the middle of a pandemic and an economic, a social, a political, meltdown going on in the country. And we've dragged all these people in to talk about silly little signs on the top. But the real reason is survival of the taxi cab industry, or Yellow Cab in this particular case in Brockton. Yellow Cab is a very important part of the infrastructure of running the city of Brockton. They are the only or the primary or the backup transportation company to a whole slew of categories, including Signature Healthcare and Brockton Hospital in particular, who and for one simple little phone call, they have a transportation system, and they can transport people to appointments and in and out of the hospital, where it's a few minutes before the phone call, there was no need for any transportation system. They are also very important to the drug rehab industry that we got going on in this city. They all have special little charge accounts and ways of using the cab system in a moment's notice. They also, are very important to the, I call it the poorer sections of the community. So it's a lot of people rely on taxi cabs. They are the only transportation company that runs 24/7. You can call them at 3 o'clock in the morning, and an answering machine does not exist at Yellow Cab. A human being always answers the phone, and they can react because they really do know the city, both the dispatchers and the cab drivers. When they go to Brockton Hospital, they know which door to go to. So it's very important that to the city that Yellow Cab survives. The problems with their survival is actually the ordinances. The ordinances were created in 1976, before there were cell phones, before there was social media, before there were, the smartphone, the charge account systems that we got going on in the world that a whole segment of the community has no access to. So the cab industry, does serve a real purpose, but they are being hit hard. We're afraid of them going the way of bookstores and the big box stores, and that's why I'm, so we're here more than just trying to get signs taken off the top of the cab. They are a maintenance problem. The lights are always going off, and it's virtually impossible from stopping them from leaking. When the signs don't operate right, of course, the car's got to be pulled off and maintenance has got to be done to them. As far as the shields are concerned, that's, with 1/4 of the cars having to have them by ordinance, it turns out that the drivers and the customers kind of request not to have that car. So those cars have a tendency to sit in the parking lot. So that's, and also the shields are very hard to adapt to some of the cars, particularly with the cars coming through virtually all with bucket seats now. So the shields are kind of like really not shields. We're not sure what they're shielding. They also kind of foul up the air conditioning and heating system, trying to get to work in the back. And that's another reason why those cars kind of sit. Rather than go to 1/8, I was requesting that they just become voluntary. We always have a few cars, usually the larger cars with bench seats that it seems to work with, and they're not a problem, but nobody makes cars like that anymore. So we know eventually they'll all be gone. So the background has more to do with the city becoming aware of how important it is to everybody to keep them in business. Now the city council and the lawmakers, it's not their job to keep anybody in business, but it's also not their job to help put them out of business. I'll call them the Uber type companies. They contribute absolutely nothing to the city. They pay no money to the city. They give us nothing to the city. and they adhere to no rules other than state rules that are going on in the city. Of course, Yellow Cab, or the taxi industry in itself, contributes a lot to the city. They have a large maintenance and office building in downtown Brockton. They give employment to always at least a couple of dozen local residents, and they do operate 24/7. So, they are very important. What they're really asking for is to make the lights voluntary. In other words, they're not going to go away. They're actually a good advertising piece, and in certain cars, they can make it work. The shields just seem to be a thorn in everybody's side, and they really don't shield anything. So as far as we're concerned, that's another reason for requesting that. Brian, I just heard him, in the ordinances, he'd be satisfied going down to an eighth, but I'd like you to really consider maybe going to 0, because that would really help.
All right, thank you, Mr. Cap. Before I get to Lieutenant Perez's responses on behalf of the police department, Councilor Thompson had his hand up. Councilor Thompson, do you have some questions?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to thank Mr. Parker and Mr. Karp for attending this meeting tonight. And I want to express my appreciation for the service that Yellow Cab does provide the residents of Brockton. So speaking about the shield, my understanding is that the light. My understanding is that the sign light is an identifier so that people or the patrons recognize that this is a yellow cab vehicle. So if the sign is removed, what would the plan be for identifying your vehicles as yellow cab vehicles, outside the paint shop?
Brian could answer that, but there is another ordinance, and I could look it up. It requires taxi cabs, not Uber type vehicles, requires other signage on it. And you will see large yellow cab signs on everyone. And they're now going to reflective tape that shines at night also. So there is no, and it is very important to the cab industry that when you pull up to a house and toot the horn and you look out the window, you know that it's a taxi, and then you know that it's your taxi. So there's plenty of signage, and it is by ordinance. In fact, I have all the ordinance in front of me. I could look it up, but Brian may want to.
Actually, I'm sure Lieutenant Perez can fill us in on that.
Okay.
And the only other issue I have is where Uber could put a taxi on or a vehicle on the road with no markings, no roof lights, no other problems that the taxi cabs do, is the amount of time it takes to put a vehicle back on the road. In other words, if you had an antique, you're not going to pay insurance all year long. You're going to take it off in the winter and put it back in the summer. Well, the cabs should be able to do the same thing. Right now, like Mr. Kopp said, I got 8 cars sitting out there because nobody wants to work. And the government had to do what they had to do. Most people are on unemployment. And also in the 1990s, in the early 1990s, we used to pay for all licenses and all medallions. Only when we wanted to put the car on the road, we already had the license. We'd get the inspection from the police. Then they would issue the medallion. We already own them. We already paid for them. Rather than go to the city hall, we have no problem with the police inspecting. We have no problem with the police inspecting the driver because we don't want the aggravation either. We already run a driver's check, and we also already run a criminal record check before we even see the letter up to the police department.
So
And
I-
time
That's
is,
not,
time
that's
is
not on the
money.
agenda tonight. That's not on the
Oh, I'm
agenda
sorry.
tonight, Mr. Parker,
I'm
so.
sorry. All right.
So, no, I appreciate the explanation. So you're saying that removing, you firmly stated that removing the requirement of the light will even the playing field between you and the, the Uber type industries. So this is a cost issue, basically.
Well,
What-
time is money.
Right. So what is the cost of these lights and the maintenance of these lights?
Well, they're probably $125 to $150. You need a strip of lights. They usually burn out. So when you take it apart, the seal breaks, then they start leaking. There's many issues. The metal is not like it used to be back in the 90s or early 2000s. And that's basically it.
Okay.
So if it's up to our discretion, yes, we'll probably have the light, but it might not be lit. And we have reflective tape on the side of the vehicles anyway that spots out at night, which shows yellow, and so it's yellow cab.
Okay, so you're saying you outside of the light, you have other identifiers.
Yeah, on the side of the vehicles.
So,
And not only that, the bottom line is a lot of cities have dropped all the rules and they don't even look at them anymore. So I am here to change the rules so that everybody can be happy. That's the bottom line.
a modernization of the rules.
Yes.
So just on the shields, I'm just not real familiar with the shield. Can you describe what the shield is and what they're used for?
Well, back in the early 90s, early 2000s, there was some problems with certain passengers. I really don't want to get into specifics. However, there was some problems with some passengers. However, if they want to do something, they can get through the driver's door or the window. So Boston requires them, but they are able to adjust that seat to the shield because most of Boston own their own vehicles. And where, we have some larger drivers, some of them can't sit behind the wheel or they refuse to. And when people leave for certain reasons, the city of Brockton suffers.
So the shield's a protective shield. Is that separates
Yes.
the driver from the
Yes.
passengers?
Right. But it also loses the one-on-one conversation with your passenger and your driver.
And you
Councilor
believe
Thompson, just a bit of history.
Yep.
I believe it was the early 2000s. I was on the council when we first put these in. We had a murder of a cab driver, and this was a reaction to that, and a reaction a day late and a dollar short, in my opinion. But that's what and there are some drivers that at the time were against them, but most drivers at the time pushed us very hard to make it not voluntary by the
And
cab companies at
to-
the time. So
to-
just a little bit of history. I want to say it was 2004. It could be 2009 rather, but I could be wrong.
Mr.
Also,
saying that the environment has changed where you
Also-
believe you have less fear of that type of act, and so these shields are no longer required?
well, I don't want to get into specifics, but that certain incident, I never knew the man. I'm sure he was a great person, but they got him through the driver's window, which means that shield wouldn't have done anything for the guy either way. And like I said, I did not know the person, but respect of, all taxi drivers, it was a tragedy. And, The
That
person,
was.
And the ordinance requires 1/4 of your fleet to have a
yes,
shield.
right.
And you'll,
So-
and so there are many cars on the street right now that do not have a shield.
Correct.
Can I add something?
Mr. Chairman, that's all my questions, but, thank you.
Actually, before, Mr. Cap, before we get to you, I'd like to get to Lieutenant Perez, who actually was, I don't know if we all received it, all the councilors did send a single sheet today in case she wasn't going to be on the call, which was very informative. But Lieutenant Perez, if you could tell us what the police, you handle these and what your thoughts are and what the chief's thoughts are on this. And
Good evening, councilors. It's correct. The sheet, when it comes to the shield, Councilor Cruz, you are correct. It is for the protection of the drivers, and 1/4 of the fleet should have a shield. And that's what we look for when we inspect them. Because due to that murder that you mentioned, when it comes to the lights, the department's position is that is basically a public safety issue. The taxi company and the chief's position and the department's position is that should be easily identifiable. Unlike your Uber and your Lyft companies, where you have a make, model, picture of a license plate number, picture of the person, you can very easily self-verify. That is not something that you can do with a taxi company. You don't know who's pulling up to your door to pick you up. You don't know what the vehicle looks like that's coming to pick you up. And so the light serves as a easily and very quick self-identifying that this is a taxi. Instead of looking, Mr. Parker is correct, and Mr. Karp saying that there's verbiage on the sides and it's required to have the name of the cab company and the phone number of the company on the sides and in the back. But is that enough to secure public safety when it comes to easily identifying a taxi? And that's where the department stands. It's a public safety issue. And that's what the light signifies. It's easily recognizable anywhere.
thank you, Lieutenant. Any members of the Councilor Ianieri?
No, I'm fine at this moment. I'm fine. Thank you.
Any other councilors on the ordinance committee have any questions? I don't see any. Councilor Nicastro, did you want to add anything?
I'd like you to take this seriously and see if there's some way we can compromise this.
Well, we take this very seriously. I'm not,
Oh, no, I know that, but this is our last cab company. I would love to see us find some compromise to help them to continue to do business in the city, because they do help a lot of people who don't have Uber or Lyft accounts. Thank you.
and I think, I will say, and from my end, I think Uber and Lyft have a leg up on the cab companies because they don't have to go through certain things, but that's more of a national issue than, in many cases, than our issue. I will say, just for myself, the idea of cutting back to 1/8 on the shields, I wouldn't have much of a problem with, as long as there's at least some available so that any driver that wants to feel that protection has the ability to have that protection. That would be my thought. The lighting on the top, I'm a little less inclined to. I think if we make that shell, we would see almost none in the very near future. And it's one of those things where you can't prove a negative, but I would hate to be the person I would hate to find out someday that we changed that and one day, some old woman got into a cab that somebody had, there are cars out there that could look like a cab to an unsuspecting person out there. So again, I'm just talking personally, and I'll see what the ordinance committee feels. My personal thought is I have no problem, at least as long as there are some cabs available with a shield, I have no problem cutting that back so that a driver can make a choice if he wants to drive but doesn't feel safe without his shield. As long as there was at least, again, the 1/8 is probably doable. I can't imagine, I don't know how many cars do you have on the road, Mr. Parker?
Well, right now I have 14, and I'm ready to take at least 2 off to save the insurance.
But when
However-
if business is good and when everything's going, you have 14 vehicles.
Well, right, that was
Okay.
before. And
Yeah,
to
no,
put those,
I'm just trying to figure what the difference is from a quarter to an eighth and,
well,
and again, my thought is just as long as there's at least a couple available for the driver who would feel safer with that. Again,
I
on
could
the
live with
other end, I
that.
have a little bit of a tougher time thinking of it, but,
Well, the
I would-
identity lights, the main problem is keeping them lit. So if we put some type of reflective tape on the side of the vehicles, which we start doing anyway, when there's a light on them, they light up just like a cruiser or a stop sign or whatever. And I would have no problem putting them on, but some of our cars have sunroofs and you can't run a wire through a piece of glass. And to make them look uniform, they all got to be in the same position. So if I could put reflective tape on the side of the vehicles with the light or the identifier without the light lit, I could live with that too. So I think it's just a matter of compromise.
Councilors, any,
Mr.
Councilor Rodriguez? You're muted. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I tend to agree with you. I think when you look at 14 cars or down to 12 cars, when you go to 1/8, you're looking at 2 cars. And to me, it's one of these things that I think we are better to be safe than sorry after the fact. I mean, the world is not getting any safer. And the reason why that law went into effect here in the city is because of some of the issues that we were having with cabs in this community. And when you look at all the issues, especially in the downtown area that we have in terms of the outside influences that we're getting in with the homeless crowds and the opioid issues that we're facing here in the city, I think it's important for us to keep working men and women in this city safe. And I tend to agree with you that I honestly believe that those identifiers, and I think Lieutenant Perez did an awesome job talking about this. I think those identifiers, if I was the last cab company in the city, I would want to advertise that. I would want to make sure that everybody in the city knew that we were the last cab in the city, so that there's a lot of us that do not like Uber or Lyft all that much that would take a cab from point A to point B. And I think if we identified and we work with city government to kind of promote the fact that you're the last cab in the city, instead of taking to go about the way that the Ubers are and the Lyfts are, I think I would advertise the fact that, you're a surviving business. And I think, we could do something through the BRA, through some of the other organizations that we have here in the community to assist you in terms of getting those things done. But I wouldn't cut those corners. And I do have a problem with the word shall being removed, because it's going to happen. A year from now, there will be absolutely none of them identified as such. So I think we can compromise by helping this business become a better business here in the community. And I think the mayor's office and our influences and stuff are something that we can do through the BRA, through the planning office, to help them out, I think, to make them a lot more successful. I don't think we should actually, to be honest with you, change the ordinance, because we don't have to throw out the baby with the bathwater. I think we need to see what we can do to help the business out and not necessarily change things that would kind of degrade the business to begin with.
Well, with that being said, I could be down to 8 cars, but it's a question of how long does it take for me to get that other car on the road. Now, the last time it took me a month, which at $30 a day per vehicle added up to quite a bit of money. Once again,
but Mr. Parker, if you're looking at if you have 12 cars and you look at a 4th, you're talking about what, 3, 4 that need to have a shield?
And if people don't want to drive them, the drivers, they actually go home or quit. I mean, this is a financial problem,
But if
not
you
a
have,
safety
if
problem.
you have 3 cars with shields and you've got another 9 without the shields, you got 9 drivers on the streets. And I said earlier, I don't know if you heard me or not, that we can work with you in terms of the city, city government to help promote your cab, to help you get funds for the cab so you can stay in business during these tough times. I think, honestly, if I was in your position, I'd try to do what I can to advertise the point that you are the last surviving cab in the city, and
Well,
that we deserve to help you succeed, because
if things don't change, then I'm not going to be the last surviving, because I'm going to have to close the doors.
no, but we would help you out. And I honestly think
Well,
that,
I'm asking for help right now.
yeah,
And we're looking to give what we can while we still keep the safety of the public in. You all set, Councilor Rodriguez?
that's it.
Councilor Ianieri?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And in listening to the comments that you've made, and even the comments that Councilor Rodriguez has made, as well as Councilor Thompson, I mean, I follow the same direction that you all are looking at as well. And surely we do want to make some type of a compromise, because with them being the last, yellow, or should I say, cab business, a yellow cab in the city of Brockton, that goes back to when we were all young tykes, to be truthful with you. But I also want to ask Mike, because I know we refer to everything as 14 cars, but you're not really just dealing with cars now. Did I not see where you have SUV or vans on the road? Did I
We
see a
have
couple of them?
vans, yes.
You have vans, and they're in recent months, do I say, or am I off track or not? I guess I've never flagged down a cab. It's been years, I guess, but
Mhm.
is it recent that you've had the vans on, Michael?
Yeah, within the last 2 or 3 years, yeah.
Last 2 or 3 years? Okay, it just happened to catch my eye. There was another day when I happened to see a couple of them on Main Street, which I thought looked very well, to be truthful with you. I'll give you the credit there, and your vehicles do, your vehicles always look well, and had the great pleasure of selling you a couple of them some years ago, if you recall. So you've
I don't
always
know.
kept up with your vehicles.
Mhm.
But I just want to, I just want to echo what the other councils have mentioned. I mean, we're going to do whatever we can to help you and make some compromise. But I agree too. It's a safety factor for us as well. So we just want to make sure it's done the right way. Uber and Lyft, something that, I mean, we can't control what they do. That's a different entity all in itself, unfortunately. But
Mhm.
we work with you any way that we can. So.
Okay.
I just want to let you know that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Councilor Thompson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just kind of put some ideas out there. I understand exactly what Mr. Parker is saying. He's not looking for a handout. He's looking for some help from the city to help his business compete with, what other transportation services are out there. I think he did a fine job of explaining exactly what type of service Yellow Cab provides to our city when it comes to our hospitals and our seniors and our drug rehab. Those are services that are not, at least from my understanding, not provided by Uber or Lyft in our city. So I think, together we should try to find a compromise to keep this man in business and his employees employed. When it comes to the sign light, I think if we allow it not to require being lit, but to have the reflective light on it, to have the actual light, the stand on top of the vehicle, I think that's pretty identifying. If whether it's lit or unlit, I think it's something that easily catches the eye. It is easily identifiable. And if we can compromise by keeping the light on top of the vehicle, but not necessarily requiring it to be lit,
Right.
I think there's something we could do there for Mr.
Yeah,
Parker.
we could put the reflective tape on them, like I mentioned.
Right. I think that would be a
And
fair
that would be a
compromise.
good compromise.
Right. I think that would be a fair compromise.
Because
And
when it's on there, it'll be on there. We don't have to remove it. a dozen times, that's when they leak because the
Right.
gaskets don't work,
Right. And if you believe that's a fair compromise, Mr. Parker,
Sure.
I believe on that issue, I believe it's fair as well. Secondly, on the shield, I look at it like this, that 3/4 of the cars don't have them, right? If this was an issue where every single car had the shield,
Mhm.
and, then we can say, hey, this is protection. But we're already allowing 3/4 of these vehicles not to have.
1/4.
Well, 3/4 not to have them.
Well, yeah.
Right.
But if you
So,
talk to Mr. Farwell, being an ex-police officer, he's with removing the shields because he can't fit behind one, even when he was a police chief.
right. Well, and I'm just saying that if we already allow vehicles not to require the shield, then to require what would work out to be 2 additional vehicles not to have shields, I don't think is going to throw off the balance of public safety. Now, the 2 vehicles that do have shields, maybe they're the ones that respond to, higher threat areas. But, I don't see the removal of shields in 2 vehicles as as upending our public safety concerns. So those are my 2 cents on this matter, and I'm hoping we, as a committee, can help Mr. Parker.
Well, I think we should table the shields right now and work on other important matters. As in, how quick can I put a car on the road if I take it off? And like I explained, if we paid for all the permits, it would just be a matter of the police looking at it. They send their recommendation. It won't have to go to council. We used to do this years and years ago. And as things changed with technology, whatever, or whoever was part of it, it's, if they can do it, it's just a matter of a registration change. I mean, it's not like we're building a rocket ship here,
Well,
Lieutenant Perez, what's the process now? They don't come to us.
They go through weights and measures, I believe, to get their permits. And then they come to us for our inspection. We sign off. And then we send it over to the clerk's office to get certified after
Right.
the signs, after the inspection is approved.
But it doesn't have to go on a council agenda. We don't.
No.
No,
Well,
not aware of.
It used to.
And Lieutenant, could you weigh in on some of the compromises that we proposed, and what your view is as in a public safety position?
So the shield is really for the safety of the driver. 1/4, like we've said here, of the cars have to have the shield. Whether they're on or they're off, and you guys decide to take them off, it's again for the safety of the driver. I understand, the space issue. We understand that, it's a barrier to communication. That's only looking out for the safety of the driver. On that issue. The light, again, we just look at it as a public safety issue. When it comes to,
We just worked on the light. So I think we're beyond.
Hold on, Mr. Parker. Lieutenant Perez has the floor.
Lieutenant Perez, please.
dark out
Sorry.
and the light illuminated, it's easily identifiable, and we don't want someone to basically mistakenly get into a vehicle by not paying attention. Often people do nowadays on their cell phones and get into a car, like it happened in Boston, that ended up in a tragedy, basically. So when it comes to the light, it's
Yes,
something
but once
that we
again,
want.
Mr. Parker, Lieutenant Perez is speaking.
It's we look at it as a safety issue. It's easily identifiable. Our citizens don't know what kind of car is pulling up, who the driver is that's pulling up, and the words and the signs already on the side of the car and the light is easily identifiable, but nothing more important than the light. I think the light is immediate. that you see it, there's my taxi, there's a taxi, and they can move on.
Thank you.
My last thing to say is many cities do not require any of these requirements anymore. And I don't like to trash other businesses or bring up other businesses. But if you look at certain cabs, now that you're aware, look how many taxis do not have taxi lights. There's 9 million livery plates walking around the city too. So if they a registered vehicle in the city of Brockton, they should have livery plates. I mean, you know, we can keep going on and on, but I think we should table everything and we'll talk on later time and we can explain more to certain councilors.
Well,
and,
that'll be up to the board and the committee, and we can
Yeah.
look at this. Before I take a motion, Donnie, did you want to have something you want to say?
I just want a point of information. One, there's no more hailing a cab. Every cab sent in Brockton is by virtual appointment. A phone call is made, and being Brocktonians, we know virtually every house in every street, so we know who we're going for, and they kind of know who we are. As far as the shields, you got to remember that Yellow Cab may have a dozen cars running around. We would like to do more, but we're having great difficulty finding drivers. It's not a high-paying job. Uber and Lyft might have as many as 25, 30, 40 cars running around during the traffic hour, and they have no signage. They have a little decal on the window, and no shields, no lights. And that's our competition, and that's who's putting all the cab companies out of business. So when they're asking for help, they're not asking you to do anything. They're asking you to get out of the way. And that's
But we still have the safety of the public that we do have to worry about too, so.
Uber and Lyft far
But we
outnumber
can't-
Yellow Cab.
But we can't regulate them, Don.
One last thing. If a taxi is late for somebody who possibly OD'd, and I hate to say it like that, and we're late for not taking him to the rehab, he may pass away. Like I said. So I think we should just table it if we're not gonna say yes. And we'll try to explain things off the record, if you could do that. Or I'll draw you up a letter and explain certain things. And
I think the committee's got a pretty good grasp, and let me just, the only thing that, and maybe Councilor Castro can help me, because I know I don't want to shrink my screen because I'm a little technically challenged. The last part of this 21-32-3-B shall be deleted in its entirety. Lieutenant Perez, you don't have the ordinances in front of you, do you?
No, I do not.
I
Oh, wait a
do.
minute. No.
21-32 is conditions to issuance of a license. No license, including renewal thereof, shall be issued. And 3B, or am I reading the right one? Yeah, 3B is to have each vehicle to be licensed has been inspected and found to have B, an identity light, required by subsection A of 21-11.
So that's the entirety thing in it. So once we make a decision on the other, we would just get rid of that.
That's right.
All right. I think we at least have a good grasp on this. Does anybody on the council want to make a motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion. A motion to I don't know how to put it. Basically, my point is that I'm okay with requiring the sign lights to exist, just not requiring them to be lit. I mean, to put that in the form of a motion.
with reflective tape, which would light up at night.
To require reflective tape.
I don't think the ordinance mentions that it has to be lit.
No, doesn't.
And I guess I would then get into a question, if it's not lit, is it a light?
Right, exactly.
I'm being slightly comic, but not really. If we say you have to have a light, but you don't have to have it on, is it a light?
I mean, maybe we can just clarify the ordinance stating that the light's required, but it doesn't require to be lit. And to add the reflective fee.
Well, actually, excuse me, 21-11A says, all taxi cabs in the city shall display an identity light on top of the taxi cab, visible from front and rear and illuminated at night. So it doesn't have to be.
Okay, the order just drops off after taxi cab.
Yeah.
The filing.
Strike illuminated at night, or if that's the will. I mean, I'll make a motion and we'll let the committee vote.
So you have, a motion has been made, not seconded yet. Does anybody want to second that?
What is the motion?
Motion has been made to take out the word illuminate. The light must be on. Correct?
And to add the reflective too.
I'll second that motion.
All right, motion has been made and seconded.
Motion, Mr. Chairman.
On the motion, Councilor, who is that? Councilor Rodriguez?
Yes. I think we owe it to the police department, especially the lieutenant who's here, or even the police chief, to have a.
Can you lean forward a little bit? I can't quite hear you.
I'm saying, I think we owe it. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
I think we owe it to the police department, Lieutenant Perez, who's here tonight, and the police chief to come back and inform us as to not this is what we're looking for in terms of the safety concerns that we had, at least on the letter that we got. So I'm not going to support this motion because I need to have a little bit more information in terms of if that's going to suffice here. I'd rather have, leave the ordinances alone as they are right now, in a form of almost a postponement, like Mr. Parker was saying. Leave the ordinances as they are. Let's see what these reflective lights would look like in terms of it functioning as a light or a reflector. Because I want to make sure that I don't want to be the council that actually changed these ordinances and then find out that something happened down the road. I think we can do a little bit more in terms of financially assisting Mr. Parker and Yellow Cab in this community to make them more viable in the sense, and but it wouldn't happen to do with ordinances.
Councilor Thompson, actually, I'm going to speak now too. I might ask you to withdraw your motion because I would probably vote no on that too, and I don't want to. I want to do what we can, but I'd like to have Lieutenant Perez maybe work with Mr. Packer and Mr. Kopp and get an idea of whether they feel comfortable with the reflective, get down there and take a look at it. And because I don't want this not to, if we vote no, we vote no, and then it's dead. I'd rather wait and see if the police department feels comfortable with it and postpone this tonight and meet again in mid-January, and get a feel from whether the police department feels comfortable with it. That would be my request, only because I don't want to vote no, but I would probably vote no tonight to err on the side of, to sound like I'm mayor, to be an overabundance of cautiousness, whatever that phrase is I use all the time. I don't want to.
I understand, Mr. Chairman, and I would gladly remove my motion so that this matter can be further looked at and hopefully signed off by the police department. But I can understand Mr. Parker and Mr. Karp's dilemma, where their competition doesn't require any of this. And, that's something that this industry has to face. And so I'm hoping we can come to a compromise on these issues, because Yellow Cab does provide an important service to our city. And, it's unfortunate that they have competition that don't play by the same rules as them.
It is. I agree with that, Councilor Thompson. I think it's it's a terribly unlevel playing field. It's an industry that grew up around the cabs afterwards, and they don't have to pay for medallions. And fortunately, medallions in cities like Boston and New York sell for hundreds of thousands of dollars, I believe, and it's
You can't
And-
sell them for 25 if you're
not
lucky.
anymore, but that's what many people paid for them a generation ago.
They
And,
lost their houses.
And, again,
I would like to table the section of the shield, so we may take that up. And I'd like to via email all the councilors to explain in more detail the existing,
what I'd entertain is a motion to postpone till the next ordinance meeting. And then I would ask Lieutenant Perez to maybe work with Yellow Cab and see if you can get an idea of what this idea of reflective tape, how it would look, and whether it's something that you and the chief would be comfortable with.
I have
as
no problem with
public
that at all.
safety of that.
We've always
So
worked with the
I'd
city.
entertain a motion.
So, Mr. Chairman, I just for the record want to say that I remove my motion, and then
Thank
I'll further make a motion to postpone. Postpone this matter to the next ordinance committee meeting.
Second,
Motion made and seconded to postpone until the next ordinance committee meeting. I'm gonna have to take a roll call. Councilor Monahan,
Yes.
Councilor Ianieri,
yes.
Councilor Thompson,
Yes.
Councilor Rodriguez,
Yes.
and Councilor Cruz, yes. So this is postponed till the next, and I'll make sure that whether it's me or somebody else running this after, we'll have a meeting by mid-January. So if you could, Lieutenant Perez, if you could, again, let us know, get together over the next week or two with Mr. Parker and Mr. Carp and give us an idea of whether, I think the shields are not a big issue. I think we'll certainly cut back on that. In fact, you could even let us know whether you think they're needed at all. I do understand now that most of the cars come with bucket seats. They're almost impossible to make, and whether they're effective. But the lights seem to be something, I think quite a few of us want to make sure that we're not, in the interest of helping the business, I don't want to eschew public safety, if that's the right word. So,
Will do, Counselor.
thank you. Thank you, Lieutenant Perez. It was nice to have my first female police officer at one of our meetings. So you're doing a great job from everything I've heard. So thank you for being here.
Thank you.
And Lieutenant Perez, I look forward to getting together. Hopefully we can fix these problems or understand why. And we've always worked in the police department, so there's no reason we won't be moving forward anyway.
Yeah, so we'll let you know. We'll let you know when the next meeting is going to be, but you'll hear from Lieutenant Perez
Thank you.
sometime probably next year. It
Yes,
might be this
yes,
year, but
hopefully
might be next year.
Hopefully next year's a better year.
Yeah, it can't be any worse.
No, don't ever say that. You never know.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
So-
If there's no other issues,
Sorry it took so long, but
somebody make a motion to adjourn.
To adjourn.
Motion made and seconded to adjourn. All those in favor, all those opposed,
Aye.
we're adjourned.